Quentin Adler watched from the distance as a delivery driver staggered, his knees buckling before he collapsed onto the cold pavement outside the warehouse. Quentin's stomach dropped. Without thinking, he sprinted forward, his steel-toed boots pounding against the concrete. A few employees nearby glanced at the fallen man but made no move to help. One of them, a shift supervisor with a clipboard in hand, shook his head. "He's probably just faking it," the man muttered. "These drivers always pull stunts to get out of work." Quentin ignored him, crouching beside the driver, a man in his late 40s with graying hair and a sweat-soaked uniform. His breathing was shallow, his face pale. "Hey, can you hear me?" Quentin asked, shaking the man's shoulder. The driver's eyelids fluttered open and he coughed weakly. I just need a second." "No, you need help," Quentin said firmly. He turned to the employees standing around. "Someone call an ambulance. Now." The supervisor rolled his eyes. "Look, I don't know who you are, but we don't need to make a big deal out of this. He's probably just dehydrated." Quentin's jaw clenched. He had owned this company for 6 years after buying it from the previous owner, but with 6 distribution warehouses. He had never personally met most of the employees. That was why he had gone undercover dressed in a dusty hoodie, worn jeans, and an old baseball cap to see how things really operated on the ground. And now, what he was seeing made his blood boil. Another worker, a younger guy with tired eyes, hesitated before stepping forward. "I'll call 911. He pulled out his phone, his fingers shaking. Quentin turned back to the driver. "Hang in there, help's coming." The man nodded weakly, his breathing still labored. Quentin looked up at the gathered employees. "Does anyone know this guy?" "Has he been here before?" One of them, a woman with a ponytail, finally spoke up. "Yeah, his name's Ray. He delivers here a lot. He always seems exhausted, but no one really asks why." Quentin's jaw tightened. That was going to change. The ambulance arrived within minutes, and Quentin helped the paramedics load Ray onto the stretcher. As they drove off, he turned his attention back to the shift supervisor, who had been standing with his arms crossed, clearly annoyed. "You didn't even try to help him," Quentin said, his voice low and sharp. The supervisor scoffed. "We have work to do. We can't drop everything for some driver who can't handle his job." Quentin's fists clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. He needed to see more before revealing who he was. He turned to the younger worker who had called 911. "What's your name?" "Derek." "You did the right thing, Derek, thank you." Quentin nodded before glancing around the warehouse. He was starting to see problems everywhere, exhausted workers moving at a frantic pace, pallets stacked dangerously high, and a general sense of unease in the air. Something was wrong here, and he was going to find out exactly what. For now, he'd keep his identity hidden. But when the time came, they'd all know exactly who he was. Quentin kept his head down as he moved deeper into the warehouse, blending in with the workers. He needed to see how things operated beyond that disturbing moment outside. A forklift whizzed past him, narrowly missing a stack of crates that wobbled dangerously. No one seemed to notice or care. A few feet away, 2 workers were hurriedly loading boxes onto a conveyor belt, their movements rushed and imprecise. One of them, a man in his 20s with dark circles under his eyes, winced as he lifted a heavy package. His coworker, a woman with frayed sleeves on her uniform, didn't even glance at him before shoving another box his way. Quentin stepped closer, watching how the team functioned. "Come on faster," a voice barked from above. A short, stocky man stood on an elevated platform, arms crossed. His name tag reads Supervisor Paul. His eyes darted between the workers with impatience, his foot tapping against the metal railing. The younger worker who had winced earlier hesitated before hoisting another box onto the conveyor belt. His grip slipped, and the package hit the edge, tumbling onto the floor with a thud. Paul's face darkened. "You break anything in there, Alex?" Alex swallowed hard. "I don't think so." Paul descended the stairs quickly, closing the distance between them. "If anything's damaged, that's coming out of your paycheck," he snapped. Alex's posture tensed, but he didn't argue. Quentin noticed the other workers around them keeping their heads down, pretending not to hear. Quentin stepped forward. "That doesn't seem fair." Paul turned, eyeing him up and down. "Who the hell are you?" "New guy," Quentin said simply. Paul scoffed. "Then keep your mouth shut and your hands moving. We don't pay people to stand around." Quentin clenched his jaw but held back. He wasn't here to blow his cover, not yet. He grabbed a box and started working alongside Alex, who shot him a wary glance before returning to his task. The pace was brutal. The conveyor belt never stopped and the flow of boxes never slowed. Within minutes, Quentin's back ached from the repetitive motion and sweat gathered under his hoodie. No wonder these workers looked exhausted. Paul hovered nearby, barking orders and criticizing minor mistakes. He never lifted a single box himself. At one point, the woman beside Alex groaned, flexing her fingers. "Can we at least get a break soon?" Paul rolled his eyes. "You get your break when I say you do. Now quit complaining." Quentin's hands tightened around the box he was lifting. A loud crash echoed through the warehouse. Everyone turned. A towering stack of pallets had collapsed near the loading docks, scattering product across the floor. A worker stood frozen nearby, his face pale. Paul's face twisted in anger. "What the hell happened?" the worker stammered, his hands shaking. I was just..." Paul marched toward him. "Do you know how much that costs us? You think we're made of money?" The worker shrank back. I thought it was stable." "Well, you thought wrong." Quentin moved before he could stop himself. "Maybe if things weren't stacked so high, this wouldn't have happened," he said, stepping between Paul and the worker. Paul turned on him. "You got something to say, new guy?" Quentin met his glare. "Yeah, this place is a mess. People are exhausted, safety's an afterthought, and you're more interested in blaming them than fixing anything." A tense silence settled over the warehouse. Workers stopped what they were doing, their eyes flicking between the two men. Paul let out a sharp laugh. "You've been here, what, an hour, and now you're an expert." Quentin didn't blink. "I've been here long enough to see what's wrong." Paul's nostrils flared. "You don't know how things work here." Quentin took a step closer. "I know enough to say this isn't how a company should treat people." Paul's eyes narrowed. "You're on thin ice, buddy." Quentin nodded slowly. "Yeah. And you're about to fall straight through." He reached up and pulled off his cap. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Paul's face drained of color. Quentin leveled his gaze at him. "I own this company." A stunned silence filled the warehouse. Paul's mouth opened, but no words came out. Around them, the workers stood frozen, eyes wide with shock. The tension in the air was suffocating. Quentin let the silence hang for a moment before speaking again. "I've spent years building this company," he said, his voice steady but sharp. "And I just watched a man collapse outside while the people in charge looked the other way. I've seen workers pushing themselves beyond their limits, safety being ignored, and a supervisor more interested in intimidation than leadership." Paul's face turned red. "Look, this isn't..." Quentin cut him off. "Don't bother, I've seen it with my own eyes. You didn't even flinch when that driver hit the ground. You accused him of faking it, and now I see how you treat the people working under you." Paul's posture stiffened. "I run a tight operation. If we don't push, we don't hit our numbers." Quentin's expression didn't waver. "And at what cost? Burned out employees, unsafe conditions, people too scared to speak up." He turned to the surrounding workers. "How many of you have been afraid to take a break because of retaliation?" A few hesitant hands went up. Some workers exchanged nervous glances as if unsure whether to admit it. Quentin's jaw tightened. "That's what I thought." He turned back to Paul. "Your job is to lead, not to break people down." Paul's hands clenched at his sides. "With all due respect, you don't understand what it's like on the floor. It's easy to make judgments from the top." Quentin's eyes narrowed. "I just spent a shift working alongside them. I lifted the same boxes, felt the same exhaustion, saw the same problems firsthand, and what I saw is unacceptable." Paul's mouth pressed into a thin line, but he didn't respond. Quentin turned to the workers. "I want to hear from you. What's really going on here? No consequences. Just honesty." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Derek hesitated before stepping forward. "The quotas are impossible," he said. "They keep increasing, but we don't get more people to help, and if we fall behind." His voice trailed off as he glanced at Paul. Quentin nodded. "Keep going," Derek swallowed. "If we fall behind, we get written up. Too many write-ups and you're out." A murmur ran through the crowd. Another worker, the woman who had asked for a break earlier, crossed her arms. "And if we try to report anything, nothing changes. We're just told to toughen up or figure it out." Alex shifted uncomfortably. "I've seen people get injured and keep working because they're afraid to report it. If you say something, you're labeled a problem." Quentin's stomach twisted. He had expected problems, but not like this. He turned back to Paul. "You knew about this?" Paul's gaze flickered, but he didn't answer. Quentin took a slow breath, keeping his voice controlled. "You're done here." Paul's expression hardened. "You can't be serious." Quentin didn't blink. "You're fired." Effective immediately. A ripple of shock went through the warehouse. Paul let out a short, bitter laugh. "Firing me won't fix anything. You think these problems start and end with me?" Quentin's gaze didn't waver. "No, but you've made them worse. And I can't have someone like you leading my people." Paul's jaw twitched, but he said nothing. After a tense beat, he exhaled sharply and turned on his heel, storming toward the exit. Quentin let out a slow breath before addressing the workers. "This doesn't end with him. I take responsibility for what's happened here. I should have seen it sooner, and I promise you this changes now." The crowd remained silent, uncertainty still lingering in their eyes. Quentin met their gazes one by one. "Starting today, quotas will be reviewed, break enforcement will be mandatory, and any retaliation for reporting concerns will not be tolerated. I'll be personally overseeing these changes, and I want you to hold me accountable. If something's wrong, I need to know." Derek hesitated. "You really mean that?" Quentin nodded. "I do, and I'll prove it." For the first time, the tension in the room seemed to ease. Workers exchanged uncertain but hopeful glances. Quentin knew fixing this wouldn't happen overnight, but this was the first step. And he wouldn't stop until this company was a place people were proud to work. Quentin stood among the workers, the air still thick with uncertainty. Paul was gone, but the damage he had done wouldn't disappear overnight. The people standing before him had spent years enduring a culture of fear and exhaustion, and it would take more than promises to convince them that things would truly change. He walked toward Derek, Alex, and the others who had spoken up. They watched him cautiously, as if waiting for the moment when he would backtrack or soften his stance. "I need to know everything," Quentin said. "No filters, no sugarcoating. If I don't understand exactly what's wrong, I can't fix it." Derek glanced at the others before speaking. "It's not just the quotas, it's the way we're treated. We're numbers, not people. Guys are scared to call out sick because they know they'll come back to fewer hours or worse shifts." Alex nodded. "And the equipment's a mess. That forklift that almost hit you earlier breaks stick all the time." "We've reported it," he hesitated. "Nothing ever gets done." Quentin's stomach tightened. He had allocated funds for maintenance. Someone somewhere had decided that ignoring those repairs was more convenient. The woman who had spoken earlier, whose name tag read Lisa, crossed her arms. "We used to care, used to take pride in the work, but when you're treated like you don't matter long enough, you start believing it." That hit harder than anything else. He had built this company with the goal of creating a place where people wanted to work, where they felt valued. And yet here they were, telling him they felt disposable. Quentin turned toward the warehouse office. "Come with me." The small group exchanged wary glances before following him inside. The office was cluttered with paperwork, a computer monitor flashing an overdue system update, a half-empty coffee cup sitting beside it. This was where Paul had spent his time away from the floor, making decisions that affected people without ever understanding them. Quentin didn't sit. "I need names. Who's in charge of equipment maintenance? Who handles scheduling? Who ignored reports?" Derek hesitated before stepping forward. "Maintenance requests go to a guy named Harris. He's supposed to coordinate with corporate, but..." He shrugged. "Good luck getting a response." Lisa added. Scheduling's run by a woman named Brenda. She decides who gets what shifts. If she doesn't like you, you get the worst ones. Quentin's jaw tensed. And retaliation for speaking up, Alex exhaled through his nose. That's harder to pin down. Write-ups suddenly appear in your file for performance issues. You're told you're not a good fit. A lot of guys just leave before it gets worse. It was worse than he had thought. And the fact that this had gone unnoticed for so long meant one thing: there were people higher up looking the other way. Quentin pulled out his phone and dialed. It rang twice before a voice answered. "This is Harris." Quentin didn't waste time. "Why are maintenance requests being ignored?" A pause. Then, "Who is this?" "Quentin Adler." The silence stretched longer this time. I wasn't aware there was an issue, sir." Quentin's patience was razor thin. "I was almost hit by a forklift with faulty brakes today." "Workers have been reporting broken equipment for months." "Explain." Harris cleared his throat. "We've been operating within budget constraints. Some repairs take time." Quentin cut him off. "If I come back here next week and the equipment isn't fixed, you'll be looking for a new job." "Understood." "Yes, sir." He ended the call and immediately dialed another number. "Brenda speaking." "This is Quentin Adler. I need you at the warehouse tomorrow morning. We're going to discuss scheduling practices." Brenda hesitated. "Is something wrong?" "Very." He didn't elaborate before hanging up. He turned back to the group. "This isn't going to be an overnight fix, but I promise you I'm not leaving this alone. Effective immediately, there will be changes." Lisa arched a brow. "Like what?" "For starters, retaliation stops today. If anyone experiences it, they come straight to me." His gaze swept over them. "That includes you." Derek shifted. "And the quotas," Quentin nodded, "being reevaluated." "We're not running a sweatshop," Alex exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "And breaks? Every worker gets the time they're entitled to, no exceptions." A long silence followed. He could see the conflict in their eyes, hope battling against skepticism. They had heard promises before. But this time it was coming from the top. Lisa finally spoke. "If you follow through, you'll earn back trust, but until then." She shrugged. Quentin respected that. He had no right to demand their belief, only to prove himself. He looked at Derek. "You did the right thing today, calling 911. Derek shifted uncomfortably. "Anyone would have." "No," Quentin said firmly, "not anyone, and that's the problem." Alex spoke up. "What about Ray, the driver who collapsed?" "I'll be checking on him personally." Lisa nodded slowly. "Then maybe things can change." Quentin met her gaze. "They will." For the first time, he saw something shift in their expressions. It wasn't trust yet, but it was something close. And that was enough for now. Quentin left the office and stepped back onto the warehouse floor. The energy had shifted. Workers weren't just going through the motions anymore, they were watching him, waiting to see if he would follow through. He wasn't about to let them down. He pulled out his phone and dialed another number. This time, his operations director, Malcolm, answered. "I need you at the East Side warehouse first thing tomorrow," Quentin said. "We have serious problems that need addressing immediately." Malcolm hesitated. "What kind of problems?" "Employee mistreatment, ignored maintenance issues, unsafe working conditions. The works." A pause. "I wasn't aware." "I wasn't either," Quentin interrupted. "That's the problem. We should have seen this. We didn't." Malcolm exhaled. "I'll be there." Quentin ended the call and turned to the workers still standing nearby. "I'll be walking the floor for the rest of the day. If you have something to say, now's the time." For a moment, hesitation lingered. Then, one by one, they started speaking up. A worker in his 50s with a stained uniform and a limp in his step approached. "Been here over 20 years. Used to be a place people wanted to stay. Now feels like we're just trying to survive the shifts." Another guy, younger with grease-streaked hands, nodded. "And it's not just the quotas. We're understaffed. When someone quits, we don't get replacements, just get told to pick up the slack." Lisa crossed her arms. "And when we do ask for help, we're told there's no budget. But somehow, there's always money for new tracking systems to push us harder." Quentin's frustration deepened. He had approved investments to improve efficiency, not to squeeze every last ounce of energy from his people. He took a breath. That changes now. We're hiring to fill the gaps, no more pushing people past their limits just to meet numbers. Derek tilted his head. And if corporate pushes back? They won't. Quentin's voice left no room for doubt. The warehouse supervisor, a wiry man in his 40s named Greg, approached cautiously. Unlike Paul, he had stayed quiet through the earlier confrontation, observing instead of intervening. "I've been trying to push for better training and staffing for months," Greg said. "Kept getting shut down," Quentin studied him. "Who kept shutting you down?" Greg hesitated. "Brenda, mostly, said we didn't have the budget, that I needed to maximize productivity with what we had." Quentin's jaw tightened. Another name added to the growing list of problems. Greg continued, voice quieter. "I'm not saying I got it all right, but I tried to run shifts without breaking people." Quentin nodded. "You want to be part of making this place better?" Greg met his gaze. "Yeah, if you mean what you're saying, then yeah." "Good," Quentin glanced around. "Because we've got work to do." The rest of the shift he stayed on the floor, watching, listening, learning. He saw how the workers maneuvered around failing equipment, how they instinctively avoided areas that were unsafe. He noticed how they stole glances at the clock, counting down to their next break, hoping it wouldn't be denied. He also saw their resilience. Despite everything, they worked with a quiet determination, pushing through exhaustion and frustration because they had no choice. By the end of the shift, he had a plan forming. As the workers clocked out, Quentin gathered the supervisors and remaining staff. "Tomorrow morning," he said, "we're shutting this warehouse down for a full safety audit. No quotas, no shipments going out until we fix what's broken." Greg's eyebrows lifted. "That's not going to be popular with the higher-ups." "I don't care." Lisa let out a low whistle. "Never thought I'd hear that from the top." Quentin looked at her. "You're going to hear a lot of things you never expected, and you're going to see them happen." For the first time, he saw something shift in their expressions. Hope. It was a start.